All
Is it
right. Good
okay?
morning.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
we're on.
Oh, so
We're
yes,
on.
I was thinking about that. I got it. That's like our intro always. Like, we're going. What's going on here?
Yeah. We'll get it. We'll get it eventually, right? So we read today John
Six.
6. We didn't read all of it, but we did read the two stories, feeding the 5,000 and Jesus walking on water. So feeding the 5,000, what was some stuff that came out of that?
So some stuff that came out of feeding the 5,000,
Revelation.
revelation, some stuff. Yeah, some revelation that came out of that. One, we had a great turnout, and I want to thank everybody who joined this morning. We had
That's
like
right.
8 of us on, and it was awesome. I was
Yeah.
just so pumped to see so many people on. So if you're watching this video and you were not on, it's okay. Um,
Tuesday.
Tuesday, man, we're gonna be back. I can't wait. This is my favorite days. Um, but anyway, okay, so five loaves and 2 fish. Basically, that Jesus was there to feed the 5,000. One thing that came out of it is that Jesus actually asked one of the disciples, I think it was Andrew, and he asked, "What are we gonna do? Like, how are we gonna feed all these people?" But it said that he knew the answer, and he was just doing asking to test it. And one of the disciples kind of gave a worldly solution. He's like, even if we bought like 2,000 or $200 of bread or whatever the ratio would have been, the exchange, it wouldn't be enough to feed all these people. He was thinking his earthly mind. And of course, I mean, it's a very popular story. A boy comes up with 2 loaves, 2 fish, and 5 loaves of bread, barley. And I mentioned the barley. One of the footnotes in the Bible was barley is like a poor man's bread. Wheat bread would be more sufficient, but it costs more. Barley is like a cheaper version of the bread. Um, the Aldi's brand. No, I'm just kidding. we eat at Aldi's. Um, but Every time to just restart the video. No offense. Um, I know we're gonna get that. Anyway, um, but the boy brought what he had, and then obviously he gave what he had to Jesus, and then Jesus was able to multiply it to not only meet everybody's needs, but to have an abundance, 12 baskets left over. So, and we shared a testimony that I'm not going to actually put in this video, but basically a story of our lives where God called us to give what we had, and then we saw a multitude, I mean, a miracle in our life of a sufficiency. And it wasn't sufficient, it wasn't for us. It was for our church at the time, our old church. But we know that we're going to see the 12 baskets abundance left over. Sorry. Um, so anyway, when we give God what we have, He is able to multiply, like Moses, right? God had the staff of Moses, and then when He gave it to the God, it came back. Now was the staff of the Lord. What is in your hand? What has God given you in your hand that you can turn over to the Lord? What resources do you have that you could give to the Lord, and He could return them and multiply them into an abundance? We talk a lot about 2 Corinthians 9:8, one of my favorite passages, because like His all grace will abound. You know what I mean? His sufficiency of all grace, but you have sufficiency in all areas, at all times, in all things, and you will abound in all good works. Basically, like it's something along those lines. But basically, like God's grace on your life to give you an efficiency of all these things, and then you're gonna have an abundance in all of good works. So that was really big about what that small portion was there. And we talked a lot
Okay.
about that. You gonna share something about that?
Just, the fact that it was Passover, something just, real quick. I know
Oh yes, the bread
it
of
is
life.
separate from this, but you could look at it another way because it is a sign, and God specific, like He says now it's Passover,
That time of Passover was coming soon.
and it was coming soon, and and Jesus is saying, where will we buy the bread so these people can eat? And Jesus asked this to test them, for He Himself knew what He was going to do. And yes, in the natural sense, like Jesus knew what He was going to do. He already knew where the provision was, but in I guess a prophetic sense of what was to come, Jesus was the bread. Like Jesus was, it was His body that was going to be bought, like to be
Broke,
able
yeah,
to broke
broken.
to be able to be for us to eat. So just something fun, like in there. Maybe there's some revelation that you'll get out of that with those with if you're looking at it in that way. Um but yeah, that was, I think.
Yeah, I think that was kind of it. I mean,
Yeah.
another thing was we talked about Jesus walking on water. The disciples were heading to Capernaum, and I think right they were crossing the
Mhm.
sea, Capernaum, and they were crossing the sea, which is about I think Beatrice shared that her Bible talks about it's about like an 8 mile, 7, 8 mile journey from the one to the other, and Jesus was not with them. He ghosted them. probably does that. Oftentimes they get away and pray, alone. And there's a lot of verses where, I mean, that Jesus wasn't with them and then he meets them. But anyway, uh, they were heading in the right direction. They were on a mission from the Lord to go to Capernaum, but they were rowing in their own strength. And a storm came, and as apostles shared, they're fishermen. They're out there a lot in the water, and they're probably used to storms. They're used to rowing in their own strength. But this time they had Jesus, and Jesus came out to them walking on the water. And at first they were like afraid. They didn't recognize him. And then Jesus said, like, don't be afraid, you know who I am. And then a lot of the versions of the Bible said they willingly received him into the boat. You know what I mean? They willingly accepted. And then instantly they were transported to their destination. So like instantly they worked all this time rowing several miles in their own strength and struggle again. And the storm comes up and then they take Jesus in and then they're instantly at their destination. So how many times do we go? Maybe we're going in the right direction. Maybe we're on our God-given mission, our God-given destiny, but we're doing it in our own strength. Again, I don't think they left. It's not like the Home Alone scene where they're like, Kevin, like, Jesus, we forgot him at the shore. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like they were probably, Jesus said, go on without me and I'll catch up to you guys. You know what I mean? So they were like, not in disobedience. They were on the right direction, but they were just still doing it in their own strength. And then Jesus, of course, joins them, and then instantly they're at their destination. You know what I mean? So how many times we're on the right direction, but we struggle and doing things in our own strength. And we have to remember now that we have Jesus. You know what I mean? He might be asleep in the boat. We might be asleep. We're not recognizing or utilizing his strength. But when we just call out to Jesus and say, listen, we're willingly receive him in our works. Again, it was something, I think it was Beatrice that said that they didn't recognize him. Sometimes Jesus is going to come in a form you may not recognize. You're going in a destination, and it might come in a course of correction. It might come in a different forms, but it may not be something you quite recognize. But again, if you're close with the Lord, again, Carrie mentioned that the sheep will know my voice, right? Know the shepherd's voice. If you're close with the Lord, you're going to recognize the voice of Jesus that might be saying, do this or do that. And then when we do that, when we yield our works over to Jesus, that's when he can take over and instantly transport us into our destination. And then I believe it was Beatrice as well that shared a verse in Psalms. And if I might have Beatrice ask her to tag what that verse is on the comments of this, so you can go back and read that. It's really, really good. It was in Psalms and was talking about this kind of exact same thing, like how the fish kind of prophetic about like a fisherman are out there and like the Lord can instantly transport them into their safe haven. So I would definitely encourage you to read that. Go back and read that as well in Psalms. I think it was like Psalms something, like 100 and something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll have her tag it in the comments. I'll ask her to do that. So that was it. We didn't get super far, but that's okay. But we did get a lot out of this, and it was such a great, enjoyable time. Do you have something with that?
Yeah, something we had also talked about was that that the storm came and Jesus allowed the disciples to go through that, and why. And we were talking about how how sometimes even with our kids we allow them to struggle a little bit before coming in, because we need to, in God's grace and in his mercy, sometimes he allows us to feel our humanness, so that way we learn that we need him, that we don't forget him, and that we remember that we have Jesus, that we have someone to take us to the other side, and that we don't continue to try to do things on our own, so if you're coming into, you know where you're going, and you're coming into like a storm, or what you feel like is a storm, to keep pushing through and to keep rowing and calling out to God and not giving up, because it might just be like I believe Apostle said, like perseverance, and it's like molding your character, and it might be just the Lord like allowing these things to take place so that he can grow you and that you can even experience the breakthrough, like you get to experience, like, can you imagine being on a boat and then in the middle of water and then 1 minute, like the next minute being on the shore, like, oh my gosh, and being able to experience that is wild, and just, so something to take with you as you're writing out your purpose.
Yeah. All right, that's it. We're gonna keep it short, under 10 minutes. So we got like 4 seconds left. So all right, we'll see you guys on Tuesday. Thanks so much. Bye.